The wings of authenticity. In the bustling streets of San Francisco, where skyscrapers rose like giants of steel and glass, there was a small green oasis that few noticed. It was a community garden, hidden between two old buildings, a refuge for nature amidst the concrete. In this piece of urban paradise, a diverse community of insects lived, each with its own unique story and personality. Among the leaves of a vibrant sunflower, Joanna, a free-spirited ladybug, awoke to the first rays of sunshine. Her red wings shimmered with perfectly symmetrical black spots, as if they were tiny jewels. Joanna was known for her radiant authenticity and her ability to spread joy wherever she went. "Good morning, world," she exclaimed, stretching her little legs and opening her wings for a morning flight. Joanna zigzagged between the colorful petals, greeting every flower and insect in her path. Her melodious laughter echoed through the garden, infecting everyone around her with her positive energy. Not far away, hidden under a hydrangea leaf, Benedito, a brown beetle with a common appearance, watched the scene with a mix of admiration and envy. His large, expressive eyes followed every movement of Joanna as he remained still, fearful of being noticed. Benedito was the opposite of Joanna in almost every aspect. Shy and insecure, he spent his days hiding, avoiding interactions, and dreaming of a courage he didn't possess. His shell, which should have been his protection, felt more like a prison that kept him isolated from the world. As Joanna flew from flower to flower, spreading pollen and joy, Benedito contented himself with watching from afar, imagining what it would be like to have that confidence, that freedom to simply be who he was. The contrast between the two could not have been more evident. Joanna, with her vibrant colors and captivating personality, was the center of attention. Benedito, with his discreet appearance and reserved nature, was almost invisible to the other inhabitants of the garden. One day, as Joanna gracefully landed on a daisy petal, she noticed a subtle movement under a nearby leaf. Curious, she approached and saw Benedito, who was desperately trying to hide even more. "Hello," Joanna cheerfully greeted. "I don't think we've met." "I'm Joanna." Benedito, caught off guard, stammered a response. I'm Benedito. Sorry, I didn't mean to bother." Joanna tilted her head, intrigued. "Bother? You're not bothering anyone. Why are you hiding?" Benedito hesitated, but something in the kindness of Joanna's eyes encouraged him to speak. I'm not like you. I'm not pretty or interesting. It's better to stay hidden so I don't disappoint anyone." Benedito's words touched Joanna deeply. She had never considered that someone could feel that way, so insecure that they would hide from the world. "Benedito," she said softly, "each of us is unique and special in our own way. You don't have to be like me or anyone else to have value." At that moment, a strong wind blew through the garden, making the flowers sway violently. Petals flew through the air, and Joanna, caught by surprise, was tossed off her leaf. Without thinking, Benedito emerged from his hiding place and flew quickly, catching Joanna in midair before she fell to the ground. His wings, usually hidden, revealed an intricate and beautiful pattern that no one had noticed before. Gently landing, Benedito placed Joanna safely on a nearby leaf. He was about to hide again when Joanna interrupted him. "See, you have amazing abilities. Your wings are beautiful, and you are brave and quick. Why hide all of that?" Benedito, still trembling from the adrenaline of the moment, looked at his own wings in surprise. I never thought I could do something like that." "That's what happens when you let your true nature shine," Joanna smiled. "You are capable of incredible things, Benedito. Don't let the fear of judgment from others stop you from being who you truly are." Joanna's words planted a seed of change in Benedito. For the first time, he began to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he had more to offer than he had imagined. As the sun began to set, painting the San Francisco sky with shades of orange and pink, Joanna and Benedito continued talking. It was the beginning of an unlikely but deep friendship that would change not only their lives, but the entire little world of the community garden. The community garden in San Francisco was a microcosm of diversity, reflecting the very city that housed it. Among the colorful flowers and lush leaves, insects of all species coexisted, each with their own stories and challenges. Joanna, the ladybug, grew up in this vibrant environment. From a young age, she learned to appreciate the unique beauty of every creature. Her mother, a wise ladybug, always said, "Joanna, remember that every spot on your wings tells a story. Be proud of them." These words shaped Joanna's personality, making her a tireless advocate for authenticity. On the other hand, Benedito, the beetle, had a very different story. Coming from a family of wood-boring beetles, he always felt out of place. While his brothers boasted about their strength and ability to burrow into wood, Benedito preferred to observe the flowers and dream of soaring higher. His father, a robust and traditional beetle, often reprimanded him. "Benedito, stop daydreaming and focus on what's important for our species." The garden itself had its own personality. Located between a bohemian cafe, frequented by artists, and an old bookstore, the green space absorbed the creative and intellectual energy of the neighborhood. The conversations of the humans passing by, discussing art, literature, and philosophy, echoed among the plants, inspiring the small inhabitants of the garden. An important figure in this scenario was Donna Rosa, a 100-year-old rose that grew in the center of the garden. With her soft petals in shades of light pink, she was the wise matriarch whom everyone respected. Donna Rosa had witnessed decades of changes in San Francisco and shared her stories with anyone who wanted to listen. "Ah, my dear ones," she often said, her petals softly trembling in the breeze, "always remember that this city embraces everyone. Here, being different is not just accepted, it is celebrated." While Joanna thrived in this environment, Benedito struggled to find his place. He watched in admiration as the hard-working bees, graceful butterflies, and organized ants went about their lives, feeling that he didn't fit into any group. One day, Benedito found refuge near the roots of Donna Rosa. The old rose, sensing his distress, gently leaned down. "My young one," she said in a soft voice, "you carry a unique gift. Your wings may not be as colorful as a butterfly's, but they have the strength to face winds that knock down other insects. Your shell may seem ordinary, but it protects a sensitive heart and a curious mind." Donna Rosa's words touched Benedito deeply, but years of insecurity could not be erased in an instant. Still, it was a start. That very afternoon, a group of children from the local school visited the garden for a lesson on ecology. Their eyes sparkled with excitement as they observed the different species of insects. A little girl with braids, wearing glasses too big for her face, noticed Benedito hiding under a leaf. "Look, teacher," she exclaimed. "What an interesting beetle. Its wings seem to have patterns on them." Benedito, surprised to be noticed and even more so to be called interesting, hesitantly emerged from his hiding place. To his surprise, the children looked at him with genuine admiration. "Do you see how full of surprises nature is?" the teacher commented. "Every creature, no matter how small or seemingly ordinary, has something special to teach us." Joanna, who was watching the scene from a nearby petal, felt her heart swell with hope for Benedito. She flew over to him, landing gently by his side. "You see, Benedito?" she whispered. "You are special in your own way. Perhaps it's time to show the world who you really are." As the sun set over San Francisco, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Benedito began to consider that maybe, just maybe, Joanna and Donna Rosa were right. Perhaps there was a place for him in this colorful garden of life, just as he was. As autumn progressed in San Francisco, bringing with it colder winds and shorter days, a new threat emerged in the community garden. A group of invasive ants, led by the authoritarian Queen Attica, began to establish themselves nearby, threatening the delicate balance of the local ecosystem. Queen Attica, with her shiny black armor and sharp mandibles, had a clear vision to expand her territory at any cost. She saw the garden as a resource to be exploited, not as a home to be shared. "This garden now belongs to our colony," she declared one day, her voice echoing ominously through the air. "All insects must submit to our authority or leave." The announcement caused panic among the garden inhabitants. Butterflies flew nervously back and forth, bees buzzed in urgent conferences, and even the normally loud cicadas fell silent. Joanna, always brave, decided to confront the situation head-on. She flew to Donna Rosa, who was watching the situation with evident concern in her wilting petals. "Donna Rosa," Joanna said, "we cannot allow these ants to drive us out of our home. There must be something we can do." The old rose sighed heavily. "Ah, my dear Joanna, I fear this will be a difficult battle. Queen Attica is known for her cruelty and determination. Many gardens have already fallen under her rule." Meanwhile, Benedito watched everything from his usual hiding place, his heart torn between fear and a growing desire to help. He wanted to make a difference, but he didn't know how. The situation quickly deteriorated. The ants began to build their anthill, destroying smaller plants in the process. They also started recruiting smaller insects to work for them, threatening those who refused. Determined to find a solution, Joanna began organizing secret meetings with other insects. "We need to unite," she insisted. "Together we are stronger than they are." However, many insects were hesitant. "What can we do against an army of ants?" asked a discouraged bee. "There are so many of them, and we are so few." It was then that Benedito, surprising everyone, including himself, emerged from his hiding place and spoke. Perhaps we don't need to fight. Maybe we can find a way to show Queen Attica that this garden is better when everyone works together." Joanna looked at Benedito with a mix of surprise and pride. "Benedito is right," she said. "Violence will only bring more violence. We need to find a peaceful solution." But finding that solution proved to be a greater challenge than they had expected. Queen Attica was not interested in negotiations. She saw the garden's diversity as a weakness, not as a strength. As the days passed, tension in the garden increased. The ants advanced, taking more and more territory. Some insects began to leave, abandoning their homes in search of safer places. Joanna refused to give up. Day after day, she flew through the garden, encouraging others to stay united and not lose hope. But even she began to feel the weight of despair. One night, as Joanna rested on a leaf, exhausted from her efforts, Benedito approached her. "Joanna," he said gently, "you have taught me the importance of being authentic, of embracing who we really are. Perhaps that is what we need to do now. Show Queen Attica who we really are, all of us as a community." Benedito's words sparked a glimmer of hope in Joanna. "You are absolutely right, Benedito. That's it. We need to show her the beauty of our diversity, the strength of our unity." With renewed enthusiasm, Joanna and Benedito began to work on a plan. They would organize a grand demonstration, a celebration of the life and diversity of the garden. Each insect would contribute its unique talent. However, as they shared their plan with others, they encountered resistance. Many insects were too scared to expose themselves, fearing retaliation from the ants. "What if it doesn't work?" a trembling moth asked. "What if Queen Attica gets even angrier?" Joanna looked at everyone with determination. "It may be risky, but it's our best chance. If we do nothing, we will surely lose our home. At least this way, we fight for what we believe in." As the plan took shape, Benedito felt a change within himself. For the first time in his life, he was not hiding. He was contributing, making a difference. And that made him feel more alive than ever. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the future of the garden. Joanna, Benedito, and their friends knew that the coming days would be crucial. The question hanging in the air was, would it be enough? Could they change the heart of a queen determined to conquer? While Joanna and Benedito focused on uniting the garden against the threat of the invading ants, Luis, a young caterpillar, faced his own dilemma. About to enter his chrysalis for the transformation into a butterfly, he feared losing his identity in the process. "What if I become someone completely different?" he confided to Benedito one afternoon. "What if I don't recognize myself anymore?" Benedito, surprising himself with his newfound confidence, replied, "Luis, change doesn't mean losing who you are. It's a chance to become the best version of yourself." These words not only comforted Luis, but also resonated with Benedito's own journey. Meanwhile, Margarita, a hard-working bee, began to question the rigid caste system of her hive. Inspired by the unity she saw forming in the garden, she dreamed of a more egalitarian society for her own people. However, her ideas were not well received by her more conservative companions. "We can't change what has always been," argued an older bee. "Each has her role, and that's how we survive." Frustrated, Margarita sought advice from Joanna. "How can I make my voice heard when everyone seems so resistant to change?" Joanna, pondering the question, replied, "Sometimes change begins with small steps. Show them through your actions how collaboration can make us stronger." These parallel conversations nourished the spirit of unity that Joanna and Benedito were trying to cultivate. Each insect, with its own struggles and aspirations, contributed to the complex tapestry of life in the garden. As the plan against the ants developed, an additional pressure arose. Time was running out, winter was quickly approaching, and many insects needed to prepare for hibernation. The urgency of the situation weighed heavily on everyone. Donna Rosa, in her wisdom, sensed the growing anxiety. One night, she called Joanna, Benedito, and other leaders of the garden for a meeting under the moonlight. "My dear ones," she began, her petals softly glowing in the moonlight, "remember that each season brings its challenges and its blessings. This moment of trial will also pass, but what we do now will echo in future seasons." Her words brought a new perspective. It was not just about surviving the winter or defeating the ants. It was about building a legacy for future generations of the garden. Meanwhile, not everyone in the garden was convinced of Joanna and Benedito's peaceful approach. A group of wasps, led by the impetuous Ferron, argued for a more direct action against the ants. "Words won't stop an army," Ferron buzzed aggressively. "We need to attack before it's too late." This dissent threatened to fragment the fragile unity that Joanna and Benedito had worked so hard to build. They found themselves not only fighting against the external threat of the ants, but also trying to maintain peace within their own community. Benedito, in a moment of inspiration, suggested including Ferron and the wasps in the planning of the demonstration. "If we give them an important role, perhaps they will see that there is strength in our united approach," he proposed. Joanna agreed, recognizing the wisdom in Benedito's words. "You're right. We cannot preach unity and at the same time exclude those who think differently from us." As the plan took shape, each insect found its unique role. Luis, still in his chrysalis, offered his silk thread to create a banner. Margarita and her bees committed to creating an impressive aerial choreography. Even Ferron and his wasps agreed to participate, forming a security perimeter around the event. The complexity of coordinating so many different insects, each with their own needs and skills, was overwhelming. There were moments when Joanna and Benedito almost gave up, feeling the weight of responsibility. But with each obstacle overcome, with each small triumph, they felt stronger and more united. The garden was transforming not just into a community, but into a family. As the big day approached, an atmosphere of nervous anticipation hung over the garden. Everyone knew they were about to do something unprecedented. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Together, they had already achieved something extraordinary. The day of the great demonstration dawned with a fine mist covering the garden, as if nature itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Joanna woke up early, her antennas trembling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. She flew to the designated spot, where Benedito was already organizing the final details. "Is everything ready?" Joanna asked, landing beside him. Benedito nodded, his expression a mix of determination and nervousness. "Everyone is in position. It's now or never." As the sun rose in the sky, dissipating the mist, the garden came to life. Flowers opened up, revealing insects of all species hidden in their petals. The buzzing of wings and the rustling of leaves created a symphony of expectation. Suddenly, the rhythmic sound of thousands of feet marched toward the center of the garden. Queen Attica had arrived with her army of ants, her black eyes shining with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp as a blade. "What foolishness is this?" At that moment, Joanna flew forward, hovering before the imposing queen. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice steady despite the fear she felt, "we have come to show you the true essence of this garden." With a signal from Joanna, the demonstration began. Twinkling lights from fireflies danced in the air, forming intricate patterns. Bees and butterflies executed a stunning aerial choreography, their colorful wings creating a living kaleidoscope. On the ground, local beetles and ants worked together to move fallen petals, creating intricate mosaics. Queen Attica watched in silence, her face an impenetrable mask. Her soldier ants stirred restlessly, unsure how to react to this peaceful spectacle. As the demonstration continued, each group of insects showcased their unique abilities. Cicadas sang a harmonious melody, while crickets accompanied them with their chirping. Spiders wove webs of intricate designs, capturing dewdrops that sparkled like diamonds. At the height of the presentation, Benedito, overcoming his fear, flew to the center. His wings, usually hidden, opened fully, revealing a surprisingly beautiful and complex pattern. "Look, Queen Attica," he spoke, his voice trembling slightly but gaining strength with each word. "Each of us has something unique to offer. Together, we create something greater than any one of us could alone." Queen Attica remained silent, her eyes fixed on Benedito. The entire garden seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her reaction. Then, something unexpected happened. A small worker ant, seemingly inspired by Benedito's courage, stepped forward. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice almost a whisper, perhaps there is something we can learn here." Queen Attica turned sharply to the ant, who visibly trembled but held her ground. For a tense moment, everyone waited for the queen to punish the bold worker. But then, to everyone's surprise, Queen Attica's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Speak," she ordered, her voice still harsh, but with a note of curiosity. The small ant, encouraged, continued, "I see strength here, Your Majesty, not the strength of numbers or conquest, but the strength of diversity and cooperation. Could we not learn from this instead of destroying it?" A murmur ran through the ranks of ants. Others began to look around with new eyes, seeing the garden not as territory to conquer, but as a world of possibilities. Queen Attica remained silent for several moments, her gaze sweeping over the garden, the united insects, the beauty of the collaboration they had created. Finally, she spoke, her voice carrying a tone that no one had heard before. "Reflection. In all my years," she began slowly, "I have never seen anything like this. I always believed that strength came from uniformity, from unquestioning obedience. But here I see a different strength." She turned to Joanna and Benedito. "You risked everything to show this to us." "Why?" Joanna flew closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Because we believe there is space for everyone in this garden, that our differences make us stronger, not weaker." Queen Attica nodded slowly. "Perhaps Perhaps there is wisdom in this. Perhaps it is time for our colony to learn a new way of being. With these words, the tension in the garden dissipated like mist under the morning sun. Insects of all species, including the ants, began to mingle, sharing stories and ideas. Joanna and Benedito exchanged looks of astonishment and joy. They had done the impossible, changed the heart of a queen, and united the garden in a way no one believed possible. This turning point was not just the end of a threat, but the beginning of a new era for the garden. An era of collaboration, mutual respect, and celebration of diversity. In the days that followed the great demonstration, the garden experienced a remarkable transformation. Queen Attica's decision to seek cooperation instead of conquest unleashed a series of changes that affected all the inhabitants of the small ecosystem. The ants, once seen as fearsome invaders, began to integrate into the garden community. Their organizational skills and collective strength, previously used to dominate, were now directed toward improving the lives of all. They helped build more resilient shelters for smaller insects, created efficient food distribution systems, and even established living bridges to help other insects cross difficult areas of the garden. Joanna, ever the optimist, was thrilled with the results. She flitted from flower to flower, encouraging interaction among species that had rarely communicated before. "Look how much stronger we are together," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm contagious. Benedito, on the other hand, was undergoing a profound personal transformation. The once timid and insecure beetle was now sought after by other insects for advice and inspiration. His courage during the demonstration had touched many, and he found himself taking on a leadership role he never imagined possible. However, not all reactions were immediately positive. Some insects, especially those who had lived in fear of the ants for so long, remained cautious and distrustful. Pharaoh and his wasps, in particular, maintained constant vigilance, reluctant to let their guard down completely. "How can we be sure they won't betray us?" Pharaoh buzzed, his antennae trembling with anxiety. Joanna addressed these concerns with patience and understanding. "Trust takes time to build," she explained. "But every day we spend working together is a step in that direction." The Queen Attica, for her part, was facing her own challenges. Some of her soldier ants, accustomed to the old way of doing things, questioned the new approach. "We are warriors, not builders," they argued. The Queen, showing newfound wisdom, replied, "Being strong doesn't just mean knowing how to fight. True strength comes from the ability to adapt and grow." As days went by, small miracles began to happen throughout the garden. Species that once competed for resources were now collaborating, finding creative solutions to share what the garden offered. Diversity, once seen as a weakness by some, proved to be the greatest strength of the community. Luis, the caterpillar who feared his transformation, emerged from his cocoon as a magnificent butterfly. To his surprise and joy, he discovered that his essence remained the same, only enriched by his new form. His journey inspired other insects to embrace changes in their own lives. Margarita, the reformist bee, saw her ideas gain traction within her hive. Inspired by the harmony of the garden, the bees began experimenting with more flexible structures in their society, allowing for greater individual expression without sacrificing collective efficiency. Donna Rosa, the wise elder of the garden, watched these changes with a smile on her petals. "You see, my dears," she said to the insects gathered around her, "sometimes the greatest adversities give rise to the most beautiful opportunities." However, not everything was rosy. Winter was approaching rapidly, bringing new challenges. The newly unified community now faced the test of surviving the cold months ahead. But there was a crucial difference. Now they would face this challenge together. Joanna and Benedito, looking at the transformed garden, felt a mix of pride and responsibility. They had started something extraordinary, but they knew the work was far from over. "What will we do now?" Benedito asked, his voice blending uncertainty and hope. Joanna, with a determined sparkle in her eyes, replied, "We will continue building, learning, and growing together. This is just the beginning of our journey." As the sun set over the garden, casting long golden shadows, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, all the inhabitants of the garden would face it as a united community, ready for any challenge that came their way. As autumn gave way to winter, the garden faced its greatest challenge yet. The intense cold and scarcity of resources tested the newly formed alliance among the different insect species. This period of trial proved crucial for the individual and collective growth of the community. Joanna, ever the optimist, found herself grappling with moments of doubt. On a particularly frosty morning, she landed on a frost-covered leaf, her wings trembling not only from the cold, but from worry. "What if we aren't strong enough to get through this together?" she murmured to herself. It was Benedito who found her there, his once timid gaze now filled with newfound determination. "Joanna," he said gently, "you taught us that our strength lies in our unity. Now it's time to put that into practice." Inspired by Benedito's words, Joanna gathered herself. Together, they called an emergency meeting with representatives from all species. The Queen Attica, adapting to her new role as a collaborator, proposed using the engineering knowledge of the ants to create warmer shelters for the smaller insects. "Our building techniques can benefit everyone," she explained, her voice carrying a tone of enthusiasm that surprised even herself. Luis, now a beautiful butterfly, offered a unique perspective. "During my metamorphosis, I learned that change, while scary, can make us stronger. Perhaps we can see this winter not as a threat, but as an opportunity for transformation." Luis's words resonated deeply with everyone present. Each insect began to reflect on how they could contribute in ways they had never considered before. Margarida and her bees, known for their tireless work during the warmer months, offered to teach energy conservation techniques. "We can show everyone how to store and use resources efficiently," she buzzed, her wings vibrating with excitement. Even Pharaoh and his wasps, who had previously been skeptical about cooperation, came forward with a surprising proposal. "Our stings, once feared, can be used to stimulate circulation in insects struggling with the cold," Pharaoh explained, his voice carrying a note of pride in being able to help in a unique way. As winter deepened, the garden transformed. Community shelters, built with the expertise of the ants and decorated with the colorful webs of the spiders, provided refuge for various groups of insects. The bees organized a rotation system to keep everyone active and warm. The butterflies, with their colorful wings, created living blankets, covering smaller groups of insects to keep them warm. Benedito, overcoming his fear of standing out, discovered that his hard shell could be used as a shield against the cold wind for smaller insects. He began to lead rescue expeditions, seeking out insects that were struggling alone and bringing them to the safety of the community. Joanna, in turn, found her calling as a storyteller. On the coldest nights, when discouragement threatened to set in, she gathered everyone to share stories of courage, perseverance, and hope. Her words ignited a flame of determination in everyone's hearts. One day, during a particularly strong snowstorm, the true strength of the community was tested. A group of larvae, still too young to face the cold, was found in danger of freezing. Without hesitation, insects of all species united in a rescue effort. Ants formed a living chain to cross a frozen stream. Wasps used their stings to stimulate the circulation of the larvae. Butterflies wrapped them in their colorful wings to warm them. Bees massaged their small forms to keep the blood flowing. And Benedito, with Joanna on his back directing, led the way back to safety. That night, with the larvae saved and warmed, there was a silent celebration in the main shelter. They were not just celebrating the lives saved, but the realization of how much they had grown and strengthened as a community. Donna Rosa, watching everything from her flower bed now covered in snow, spoke in a soft but firm voice. "Look at what we have achieved together. Each of you has found strength you didn't know you had, and together you are invincible." Joanna and Benedito exchanged looks of deep understanding. They had started this journey as insecure individuals, searching for their place in the world. Now they were at the center of a strong and united community, each having discovered talents and courage they hadn't even known they possessed. As winter continued, the garden faced each new challenge with renewed determination. The season that many feared would be their end was, in fact, proving to be the catalyst for their greatest growth and transformation. With the arrival of the first signs of spring, a new energy pulsed through the garden. The inhabitants, strengthened by the trials of winter, looked to the future with renewed hope. However, a final and unexpected challenge was about to test the resilience of the united community. One morning, Margarita returned from a reconnaissance flight with alarming news. "Humans," she buzzed, her wings vibrating with agitation. "They are planning to remodel the garden. I heard their plans to uproot plants and bring in new species." The news spread quickly, causing waves of concern. The garden they knew, which they had protected during winter, was at risk of being drastically altered. Joanna called an emergency meeting. Insects of all species gathered, their voices blending into an anxious buzz. "What can we do?" asked Luis, his butterfly wings trembling slightly. "We can't fight against humans." Queen Attica, her voice firm, declared, "No, we cannot fight, but perhaps we can find a way to communicate our presence, our importance." Benedito, who had grown in confidence over the months, stepped forward. "What if we could show them how vital this garden is, not just for us, but for the entire ecosystem?" Ideas began to flow. Each group of insects proposed ways to highlight the beauty and importance of the garden. The bees suggested intensifying pollination, making the garden bloom like never before. The butterflies planned synchronized flight displays to catch attention. The ants offered to create intricate patterns on the ground, showcasing the complexity of underground life. Joanna, listening to all the suggestions, felt a wave of pride and determination. "This is our greatest challenge," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "But it is also our greatest opportunity to show what it truly means to be a community." The days that followed were filled with intense activity. The garden transformed into a construction site, with every insect playing a crucial role. The ants, led by Queen Attica, coordinated the efforts on the ground, creating elaborate patterns that highlighted soil health and the importance of decomposition. They worked tirelessly, moving grains of dirt and organizing fallen leaves into designs that were visible even to human eyes. Luis and the other butterflies practiced complex flight formations, creating color displays that caught the eye. They flew in sync, forming shapes and patterns that seemed almost impossible for such small creatures. Margarita and her bees intensified their pollination efforts. Under her leadership, flowers that would normally not bloom until later in the spring began to blossom, creating a vibrant tapestry of colors throughout the garden. Pharaoh and his wasps, once seen as threatening, took on the role of guardians, protecting the plants from pests that could harm the collective effort. Benedito, using his newfound confidence, led a group of beetles in creating strategic underground tunnels, improving soil aeration and promoting healthier plant growth. Joanna flew from group to group, coordinating efforts and ensuring that everyone was working in harmony. Her tireless energy and contagious optimism kept morale high, even as fatigue began to set in. As the day of the garden's transformation approached, tension mounted. The insects worked day and night, aware that their efforts might be their only chance to save their home. On the eve of the big day, Donna Rosa, who had silently observed the preparations, spoke. "My dears, you have already achieved the impossible once. You united in the face of adversity and grew stronger. Remember this tomorrow, when you face your greatest challenge." Her words echoed throughout the garden, reminding everyone not only of what they were about to confront, but also of how much they had already overcome together. That night, as the garden rested in a tense calm, Joanna and Benedito met atop a rosebud about to bloom. "Are we ready for this?" Benedito asked, his voice a mix of determination and apprehension. Joanna looked down at the garden below them, seeing not just flowers and leaves, but a united community ready to face the unknown. "Yes," she replied with a confident smile, "we are more than ready. We are united." The stage was set. The fate of the garden and all its inhabitants would be decided with the rising of the sun. Dawn arrived with a blend of soft colors in the sky, a dramatic contrast to the palpable tension hanging over the garden. The distant sound of human voices and the creaking of equipment signaled the imminent arrival of the gardeners. Joanna flew swiftly between the groups, giving last-minute instructions. "Remember, this is the moment we have been preparing for. Each of you has a crucial role. Together, we can make a difference." As the humans approached, the plan went into action. The butterflies, led by Luis, began their most spectacular aerial dance. Their colorful wings created a living kaleidoscope in the air, moving in patterns so complex and beautiful that it was impossible not to notice. "Look!" exclaimed a human voice. "I've never seen so many butterflies together like this." As the humans paused to admire the spectacle, the bees sprang into action. Led by Margarida, they initiated intensive pollination. Flowers that were on the verge of opening burst forth almost instantly, creating explosions of color throughout the garden. The gardeners were astonished. "Incredible," said one of them. "The flowers are opening right before our eyes." On the ground, Queen Attica and her ants revealed their meticulous work. Intricate and symmetrical patterns covered the ground, highlighting the complexity and beauty of underground life. The humans leaned in to examine more closely, fascinated by the precision of the design. Benedito and his fellow beetles emerged from their strategically positioned tunnels, bringing to the surface small nuggets of minerals that made the soil shine under the morning sun. "Look how healthy the soil is," exclaimed another gardener. "These insects are doing an amazing job of natural maintenance." Meanwhile, Ferrao and his wasps executed precision maneuvers, eliminating small pests that could damage the plants. Their work, once feared, was now seen as an essential part of the ecosystem's balance. Joanna flew back and forth, coordinating efforts and ensuring that every part of the garden received attention. Her small red form with black spots was a vibrant splash of color, repeatedly capturing the human's gaze. As the gardeners walked through the garden, their original plans began to change. They chatted excitedly, pointing to different areas and discussing the incredible biodiversity they were witnessing. "We can't interfere with this," said one of them. "This garden is a perfectly balanced ecosystem." However, the moment of greatest tension was yet to come. One of the gardeners approached Donna Rosa, the ancient rosebush that was the heart of the garden. He extended his hand, holding a pair of pruning shears. In that critical moment, something extraordinary happened. All the species of insects, driven by a collective instinct, converged on Donna Rosa. Butterflies landed on her petals, bees buzzed around her, and ants formed a protective circle at her base. Joanna and Benedito landed side by side on one of her buds. The gardener paused, his hands suspended in the air. The scene before him was breathtaking, a living demonstration of how each part of this small ecosystem was interconnected and mutually dependent. "Wait!" he called to his colleagues. "Come see this!" The other gardeners gathered, marveling at the spectacle. The rosebush, with its age and wisdom apparent in every curve of its branches, was at the center of a web of life so complex and beautiful that it left everyone speechless. In that moment, a gentle breeze swept through the garden, carrying the fragrance of the newly opened flowers. It was as if nature itself was making its final appeal. The lead gardener lowered his tools and smiled. "Change the plans," he announced. "This garden doesn't need our interference. It is thriving on its own. Our task now is to protect and preserve this natural wonder." A collective sigh of relief swept through the insect community. Joanna and Benedito exchanged looks of joy and disbelief. They had done it. The garden was saved. As the gardeners walked away, animatedly discussing how they could use this garden as a model for more sustainable gardening practices, the reality of what they had achieved began to settle among the insects. Joanna flew to the top of Donna Rosa, where everyone could see her. "We did it," she announced, her voice overflowing with emotion. "And we did it together. Each of us played a vital role. This is proof of what we can achieve when we work in harmony." The garden erupted in a silent celebration. Wings fluttered, antennae touched, and a sense of unity and accomplishment hung in the air like never before. Benedito, overcoming the last remnants of his former shyness, flew to join Joanna. "You were right all along," he said softly. "True strength lies in being authentically ourselves and working together." As the sun rose in the sky, bathing the garden in golden light, the insects knew they had not only saved their home, but had also transformed themselves and their community in ways they could never have imagined. In the weeks that followed the transformation of the garden, a new era of harmony and prosperity took hold. The event that nearly resulted in the destruction of their home became a turning point, not just for the insects, but also for the humans who cared for the space. The gardeners, inspired by what they had witnessed, transformed the site into a model of ecological gardening. They installed educational signs explaining the importance of each insect species to the ecosystem, making the garden a popular destination for schools and nature enthusiasts. For the insect community, the changes were even deeper. The barriers between species, once so rigid, had dissolved. Ants and bees collaborated on building and food-gathering projects. Butterflies and wasps conducted joint patrols, keeping the garden safe and healthy. The beetles, once so reserved, now openly shared their knowledge about soil and roots. Joanna, although still a respected leader, found herself in a different role. Instead of constantly guiding others, she now watched proudly as each member of the community took initiative and led in their own way. She became more of a counselor, sharing her wisdom when asked. Benedito, in turn, emerged as a symbol of personal transformation. His journey from a shy and insecure beetle to a confident and essential member of the community inspired others to embrace their own changes and growth. The Queen Attica, once feared as a conqueror, was now admired as a skilled diplomat, frequently mediating discussions among different groups of insects. Her colony of ants had become an integral part of the garden, their building and organizing skills benefiting everyone. Luis, the butterfly, led initiatives to celebrate the garden's diversity. Seasonal festivals were established, where each species could showcase their unique talents, further strengthening the community bonds. Donna Rosa, in her role as a wise elder, continued to be a source of comfort and advice for all. Her roots, now intertwined with those of other plants, symbolized the interconnectedness of all forms of life in the garden. One afternoon, as the sun set over the vibrant and thriving garden, Joanna and Benedito landed on a newly opened rosebud. "Did you ever imagine we would get this far?" Benedito asked, his voice full of admiration. Joanna smiled, looking at the garden filled with life and activity. "Honestly, no," she replied, "but that makes it all the more special. We built something greater than any of us could have dreamed of alone." As they watched the scene below, they saw not just a garden, but a living testament to the power of authenticity, cooperation, and resilience. Every insect, every plant, every grain of soil told a story of transformation and unity. The garden had become more than just a habitat. It was a home in the truest sense of the word, where each individual could be authentically themselves, contributing to the greater good of the community. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Joanna and Benedito knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together as a united and strong community. Rest now, my darlings, and let your dreams take flight. I'll see you tomorrow with new adventures to tell.